A lot of what you're doing in rehearsal is allowing them to improv before being under pressure to make the day. I don't like to block the scenes in advance because you never know what the set's going to be like, but I love to get up on our feet and start to mess around with each other.
You're just making me madder!
So this story, of course, is inspired by the 1981 book War of the Roses and the very funny 1989 film by Danny DeVito. But this movie feels very different. Tonally, the humor is very different, the story is very different. What most intrigued you about wanting to explore the themes in the original source material? Of course, the script is by Tony McNamara.
Yeah. I credit Tony for finding a different thing. And when it was brought to me by Benedict and Olivia's companies, with Tony already having worked on it for a while. And once I read it, I said, oh, this really is different. It's, to me, much more of a genuine sort of tragedy because you're rooting for them the whole way through. I was thinking about remarriage comedies, Philadelphia Story, Adam's Rib, those are where I hoped the audience would keep thinking they might pull it back together and that their banter was so good, even when they were at their darkest place, that you might still root for them and then be truly emotional when they just figure it out just when it's too late.
What I love about your update is the role that ambition plays in each of their lives, but also is the friction between them. And in Danny's movie touched on this a little bit, but in this movie, each partner's equally ambitious in his or her job. Yeah. And then the gender politics of him then becoming the caretaker to the kids.
Yeah.
So tell me about exploring that.
As Tony says, a lot of couples are both working, and it's just how do you figure it out? And the thing I liked was Olivia's character having sort of passively repressed her dreams and not even realize that she cared that much about them until they start to work. The storm destroys him, but it gives her a chance to find her mojo, if you will, and her superpower. And she's surprised that she likes it that much. And I think that is sometimes, people become, they're almost in denial of how much they care about it, and they sacrifice. I love that scene. I just popped in when that scene was playing where she says, well, so someone's going to have to make a sacrifice for the marriage. Who's it going to be? And that is a wonderful kind of relatable predicament, I think. And so in both cases, their egos become problematic, though, and his ego, which is kind of crushed. The best stories are always identity crises, and his ego takes such a hit. The suspense, I think, of his character is how is he ever going to get his superpower back, and then how is she going to not get consumed by all the new affirmation?
So I'd like to know what it is like to direct a Tony McNamara script. He, of course, wrote Poor Things and The Great, and he is just the most verbose and the most fantastic at insults I think I have heard at least in the last 10 years. But super rapid fire dialogue. What is it like to pace those moments? Because, of course, Benedict and Olivia are just absolutely flawless in their delivery.
Yeah, it was the perfect, I think he was writing it with them in mind. I think they were involved from the beginning. And so he knew how fast both of them were. And they are so fast. Part of what hooked me on the story was that dinner scene, because I'm not that fast. I'm not even close to that fast. When you hear English people that are that clever going at it.
So smart, too.
You're like, what is wrong with the American language and the American thing? Why can't we be that
Ask
funny?
a Brit and they'll probably tell you what's wrong with us.
Well, and then you
right?
watch Americans try in the story, and they so don't get it, And we made the film in England, too, so the whole time I brought my production designer and my producing partner, and everybody else is British, and I never understood anything they were talking about. It's hard to figure out what's really going on sometimes when people.
Totally.
And I know it's all stereotypes. I promise.
But they're good stereotypes.
I'm a total Anglophile. I only got into doing Austin Powers because I loved Monty Python. I worked with Douglas Adams for a while. Sacha Baron Cohen. I produced Borat. I actually probably get British humor even more in some ways than American humor, but I don't understand how they do it. So I'm just always envious.
It is like a magic trick to watch.
It's a heightened it's a heightened level of brain activity between multiple people.
That we do not learn in this country. So there's a lot of physicality in this movie, a lot of stunt work. What was the most logistically challenging sequence to nail down, but also to keep everyone safe? And how are you managing all the frying pans and other objects that we see whizzing across the screen?
Mark Ricker did the production design and just created such an incredible playground in that house. That was all built on the stage. We rehearsed quite a bit. We had stunts helping us coordinate, but they mostly did their own stuff. Oh, the one place that there's a really great stuntman helping us is when Benedict's character dives for the dagger underneath the chandelier. There's just one little shot of him doing that and ducking out that's not Benedict. But when we did the shooting range scene, I visited that. There's a weird little place in the middle of England where everyone has guns. You don't think about guns in England, but there were 9 shooting ranges and a military training exercise where they were literally just firing, assault rifles as fast as they could. And the guy kept saying, "You'll get used to it." And we never got used to it. There were guns going off around us on the Scout, and we were always cringing. And I was like, okay, so and so I put on the set when we were shooting, I had the sound guy rig a device where I could push the button anytime I wanted a gun to go off as loud as possible. So those are real reactions when Benedict and Olivia, they don't
look
see them
very
coming.
real.
Yeah, and because I just thought, do you remember that scene in Boogie Nights when the guys they're doing the whole scene with the
Alfred
firecrackers?
Molina and oh my God, I love that scene.
That's what I stole that from.
Well, you accomplished it. That was very, very smart. So I want to talk a little bit about rehearsal. Are you a big rehearsal fan? And obviously with these amazing actors, you probably didn't need a lot of rehearsal, but what is your preference in terms of...
I love rehearsal because, especially with improv capable actors like Andy and Kate, a lot of what you're doing in rehearsal is allowing them to improv before being under pressure to make the day. When I worked with Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell on The Campaign, we got to do hours of just play, and I don't like to block the scenes in advance because you never know what the set's going to be like and what the props are going to be like, but I love to get up on our feet and start to mess around with each other. And when you make a deal with the actors, when you come into the situation and just say, look, I know you guys can probably be really amazing at this, but I'm not going to sleep if I can do anything else to make you capable of doing your very, very best. And I'll cast people around you who will help, make it worthwhile, make it fun to play. And I'll bring a crew that, is really performance driven as opposed to just making great shots and making, and I personally I want to hear everything you think about it. This cast, watching them step up. Olivia, I think, is aware in a certain way and so confident of how funny she is. Benedict, he was like intimidated. He was like, I got to keep up with her. And he so did. That was the joy for me is bringing it for the cast and, giving them the background, the playground, the teammates to do their very, very best work.
Well, they were lucky to have you, and so are we. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Jay.
Thank you. Great question.
Congratulations.